Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Business Lounge. You are live. We are live from London RoxomTV studios. It is Think Tank Thursday, and for the first Think Tank Thursday, I'm joined by one of the leading minds in the British Bitcoin scene, a good friend of mine, Ben Cousins. Ben, welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you, Alex. Happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have people building things in the Bitcoin world in the studio. This show, the Bitcoin Business Lounge, your admission is not based on what credit card you might have or how many points you have or what airlines you fly on, but whether you are a Bitcoin and whether you're building in the scene. And so, welcome your welcome to the lounge. Ben, tell us a little bit about what you're excited about that's currently being built in the Bitcoin space.
Sure. So just for context for people watching, I work at ZBD, which is a Bitcoin company associated with video games. I'm also the founder of Antidote, which is a startup studio for Bitcoin entrepreneurs. And I've been coming to London-based Bitcoin meetups and UK-based Bitcoin meetups for a little while now, probably two-ish years, maybe 3 years. And I think the thing that excites me most now is that you're seeing that transition or that inflection point where real entrepreneurial talent is beginning in the UK is beginning to start to want to work on Bitcoin solutions, and specifically Bitcoin infrastructure and the potential it has in financial services where the UK shines, in more specifically in more niche fintech, consumer credit solutions, accounting. All these areas are now really ripe for disruption from the Bitcoin stack, which includes Lightning. And I think people in the UK are beginning to see that opportunity is there and are beginning to probe and explore what is possible building on this stack.
We had a local community leader in the studio yesterday, Cypher, who is a big proponent of the sovereign stack and maybe doesn't necessarily believe that Bitcoiners should be integrated into regulated markets to the same degree as other people. How do you think he's wrong? Do you think that Bitcoiners need to be building into the fiat society?
It's a good question. I think that it's a spectrum. I believe that generally in today's social media world, things are very quickly just put into black and white terms, and the reality of existence is that it's a billion shades of grey. I think when I look at, I probably lean more towards, I think Jack Dorsey said, we're going to replace the financial system, not build into it. But that's the real question in all of these scenarios is on what time horizon. And in the near term, I think one of the most harshest lessons I have personally learned working in this space is that truly no one cares about Bitcoin, outside of our circle. Truly, it is not on people's radar. It is not something they think about every day. Even in the world of financial services, they hear about it. It's like a crank thing that oddballs use, and we know and believe differently. But there is a bridge to be crossed, and crossing that bridge involves meeting people where they are. And through that lens, I believe there's definitely a market need to be matching the user experience, matching customer expectations for what interacting with Bitcoin is like. And in many cases, unfortunately, that can lead to custodial service provision, for example, as the best means of going to market. But at the same time, another way of looking at it is if you're handling and moving people's money, other people's money, not your own, shouldn't you have to abide by the law? Do you really, really want no consumer protection whatsoever? So I believe it's a spectrum. And in the long run, just like the adoption of the internet didn't look like what the original founders of the internet or builders of the internet, envisioned. They didn't see 4K video streaming as being a part of internet communication. The internet still won big time, right? And changed society and changed the world. Bitcoin will do the same, although probably in ways that you and I will never comprehend, 10 years from now.
My understanding is your background is almost in the finance of tech. Can you tell us a little bit about where you've come from and how you got into Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. So originally, I was working in video games. Actually, I was so as a teenager, I started testing games for money while on school holiday. Great job. Gives you some headaches though. And then I graduated from university, and I was not thinking commercially at all. I think I'm from a I'm older than I look, and I'm from an era where you were told you could kind of do whatever degree you wanted, and then just go into work, and that would be okay. But that was pre-financial crisis. I graduated into the financial crisis. Humanities degrees were just like not desirable at all. There was nothing to do. So I figured, okay, well, I'll be a starving artist. And I went and made films for a couple of years. That went nowhere, unfortunately. Life lesson there.
I think Scythe has a similar story there.
Oh, really? Yeah, so I tried
Well,
that.
now I say that he's now made Wonder Rabbit, which you should go see at the Camden Fringe, people. Yeah, but
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Is that a Bitcoin movie?
it's a interactive theater experience
Oh, cool. Okay.
that is Bitcoin themes interwoven. It's
Nice,
Promethean.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm
beautiful.
surprisingly, I'm into that kind of thing. But yeah, long story short, I did a postgrad degree in finance just because it was as simple as I Googled top paying jobs London because I was needing money, and it was like banking, and I was like, okay, I didn't have any qualms about like working in banking, so I did. That led to a career in investment banking, which started in M&A for the most generic bank imaginable, basically. It was very uninspiring, and I was a nerd in my spare time, and I was very drawn to.
Wait, you have spare time working in investment banking?
I did not. It was in the lead up to it that I had.
Okay.
I had to. There's two. It's funny. Leaving banking actually reawakened a whole side of my personality that was dormant for like
I'm
a
sure,
decade.
yeah.
But I was noticing that bankers were trying to work with what they call TMT, technology, media, and telecoms companies, and yet they had zero understanding. This is like 2012, 2013. They had zero understanding of how the internet was changing society and like what consumers were doing online. They were just looking at a P&L and being like, wow, this is a great business, let's sell it. I then, a couple of years into that, I met another merchant bank. They were called the Rain Group. And I joined them because they had a different mindset. They were like, everything they did had a strategic thesis behind it. And they worked in primarily media, entertainment, and sports, and that had a heavy overlap with the video games background I had. So I worked on quite a lot of capital raising and M&A transactions in the games industry, including I was part of the team that helped Epic Games raise money from Sony, PlayStation, but also I worked on SoftBank's acquisition of Arm, the chip company, and a couple of other like quite high-profile capital raises, which taught me a lot, bluntly. It was around this time that I was first introduced to Bitcoin, and I was introduced to it from that nerd side of my life. So a friend came to me and said he was using it to send money home, and he was Argentinian. And the first time he told me about it, I completely dismissed it. I was just like, this sounds like absolute BS. Like, there's no way this is going to work, and you'll get hacked as soon as you use it. What are you doing? And he was very, very, very insistent, like very insistent.
It's not familiar.
So I'm not I don't hold like obstinate positions just as like concrete totems. So I moved. He took me, actually. We were flatmates. I went to our bedroom and I bought some Bitcoin then and there, and he gave me the good advice from the get-go, which I'm very lucky that this happened. But he made me move the money off the exchange into my own wallet, write down a seed phrase, and start to grok like, hey, now you've got it.
Day one.
Yeah, day one.
Insane.
And he was standing right next to me and doing it with me, and I was enough of a nerd still that I loosely understood what was going on. When I say loosely, like I'm not saying I'm intelligent here in that way. It was like I looked at it and I was like, this is just like BitTorrent. And I was a heavy BitTorrent user when I was a teenager. And it was like, okay, so it's peer-to-peer, it's heavily encrypted, but this time instead of files, it's value. And it just kind of clicked.
I had a similar thing, but I think a couple of years later, a friend, because I've never bought a shitcoin. A friend of mine said, "No, Bitcoin is independently verifiably scarce. The other ones aren't." So it's like kind of like digital gold. That was before I ever, 2 years before I ever went on Bitcoin Twitter, right? Like, it just kind of clicked. But I think many people don't understand the problem with the current financial system. As someone who's kind of transitioned maybe from the current financial system to a new system, why?
Yeah, that was. They say once you've seen the light with Bitcoin, you can't unsee things, and that was very true of my experience. So from that moment of sort
It's
of
like
being
you've seen
introduced
Wonder
to it,
Rabbit. Strange.
yeah, it's like I always think of that bit in the movie The Fountain where Hugh Jackman like sees the light and it's just like radiating all over him. But I was looking at that time. I started to talk about it internally in the bank, like we should try and do something here. But there was, and I did it. I remember this was around Christmas 2016, 17. I said, show of hands, who's got Bitcoin in the room? Everyone had bought some. And it was including the partners and like senior people in the fund. So everyone had some, and I was like, interesting. But even though they'd all bought some, they were deeply skeptical that it was going to work. So everyone had taken a punt, but no one was really willing to move. And this started to nudge me out of banking because I was like, I think this is really fundamental. Like the internet, which is effectively a supranational state, now has its own currency. And I moved towards venture capital as a result of that. So I wanted to take risk and I wanted to back founders who were working in this space. But the truth is back then, there was vanishingly little that was really VC backable. I mean, unless it was an exchange, Coinbase was the big one being funded at the time, or Kraken, there really wasn't very much that was going to become a commercial business. It was a lot of R&D still needed to get the protocol where it was. This is pre-Lightning.
What areas do you think are valid markets in Bitcoin? I remember that Shinobi once tweeting there's only something like 4 different areas that you can actually make money in Bitcoin legitimately. I can't remember what they are. He said mining was one of them. I'm not sure that's true. But what it's very difficult to make money in Bitcoin, right? Because it's an asset without a liability. You don't need custodians and intermediaries. How can you make money in the Bitcoin industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're all still puzzling it out. I'm definitely keen to nudge things in directions which will provably make money. And I think one of the, skipping ahead a bit now, like where founders today, I often find trip themselves up in Bitcoin is they want to earn Bitcoin. So they believe, for obvious reasons. So they start up a business, raise venture capital, and go out to make Bitcoin denominated revenue, be it through transaction fees or subscriptions or whatever it is. In reality, the daily active user base of Bitcoin is just too small.
I think this is something we've talked about before, right?
Yeah.
The size of the, I don't want to use the term liquidity pool, but it's probably the right term here. Actually, the amount of capital in Bitcoin isn't that much compared to the whole world. So you're limiting your market.
Paradoxically, yes. Yeah. So it's like this 2 trillion asset or whatever. No one wants to spend it because everyone recognizes we're still in the accumulation phase. So you bring out like consumer-facing tools that make Bitcoin easy, and you believe that people will start using it because you've made it so easy. They won't. Like you talk to a normal person who isn't deeply orange-pilled and like as aligned as we might be about our perspectives on Bitcoin, and they why would I ever spend this? I'm gonna, even they grok that I'll spend my real, like my fiat, right? In their mind, their real money, and they'll keep hodling the Bitcoin. But to come back to your question about like how do you monetize, I think you're dealing with money. Financial services is an old industry, a very established industry. It's forms of financial services that will drive revenue.
Yep.
And the real trick today, in my view, is providing financial services that you receive your money in dollars, sterling, euro, whatever. You receive fiat, and if you can receive and scale that fiat revenue like a venture-backed business traditionally does, you can begin accumulating Bitcoin, and then you have a war chest. And as time and adoption evolves, it becomes to just, you have like an unfair advantage over a traditional startup, which is still balance sheet in fiat, growth at all costs, usually on negative unit economics, hoping for more fundraising in future. Whereas if you can make dollars and accumulate Bitcoin, you're in a very different position.
This seems like maybe an opportune moment to talk ZBD. ZBD isn't I guess necessarily a financial services company, but it kind of is as well. It's ad tech financial services platform. You joined the company a bit later than it was found. Tell us a little bit more about your ZBD journey and what ZBD does in the world of Bitcoin.
Sure. So ZBD is a payment stack for gaming, basically, that uses Bitcoin Lightning at the core of it to enable things that the games industry has always wanted but never could do in a fiat system. The reason for that being primarily that games thrive on microtransactions, and if you try and process microtransactions on fiat rails, the fees are too high to actually make it work properly. So you tend to have a lot of batching behind the scenes, a lot of basically workarounds to actually get money working in games that are high friction, painful for the consumer. And now you increasingly see the industry itself starting to wake up to its own payment problem, because they look at their margins and they go, we're giving 30% to Apple, we're giving another 7% to a provider over here.
You talked about working at Epic Games. Of course, they were the biggest fighters against that 30%.
Well, exactly, right? Exactly. So my history with ZBD is I mentioned I had this gaming background. I was working in venture capital at this point. I was primarily focused on investing in games businesses, but I stumbled across ZBD. I was introduced to Simon and Andre, the founders, quite early on. I think the business was maybe a month or two old.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I led the seed round in it because I was like, okay, Bitcoin plus gaming, I like this. It was
a good thing they were actually, very talented people and not.
They truly had substance behind what they were saying. Yeah, I think one of the things that the team realized very early on was that you're going to be serving the games industry, not the gamers. And the games industry is going to turn to you and say, hey, we deal with 15-year-old kids and you want to introduce them to Bitcoin. Where the hell are your licenses? Where the hell is your authority to do this coming from? And they embrace that. And the result is they actually have customers today, and we're actually at reasonably decent scale.
Right, you're a licensed, what is it called, money transmitter?
Yeah, we're a licensed money transmitter in the US. We hold the MiCA license in the EU and an EMI license. So we can basically move quite freely as a business between fiat and Bitcoin in providing services to customers. And that's important when you keep in mind that most people don't care about Bitcoin, right? So how did we go to market? Well, the first thing we looked at was when people talk about gaming being 3-4 billion people or whatever it is that are playing games, there's like 500 million playing PC console games, and then there's the rest on mobile.
It's crazy how it flips.
Exactly, and they're playing Candy Crush at the bus stop, right? So they're still a gamer.
I went to a few games conferences 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago in London, and at the time they were already using pretty advanced psychology about how to basically trap people in loops, and it was eye-opening. But the games, nonetheless, there are many great games that aren't just about trapping people in the game. How does ZBD help them to reward their players?
Yeah, so it is. I would say I disagree slightly in terms of it is really about engagement. Like you've got to hook the player in and keep them in your game, because the longer they're in the game, the more chances you have to monetize your game. And monetizing games is difficult. So game developers have gone for two paths, simplifying broadly. There is in-app purchases, so buy power-ups, buy skins, buy boosters that get you further in the game, or ad monetization. So play the game for free, but you're going to see ads. A fairly standard business model there is to reward the gamers for doing things that make you money. This existed before us, so to run with the Candy Crush example, it'd be like you failed that level, you can spend $1 to buy a retry, or you can watch an ad and get a free retry, right? And so the reward is the free retry, but both options monetize for the developer. What we came to market with is, why don't you give them a better reward? Why don't you share with them something that has real value? Why don't you share money with them? And you can do that relatively trivially with Lightning. If you try and do it with fiat currency, you very quickly hit these basically, they're really terrible experiences for the player where you get frustration, where you see yourself being promised that you're winning money, but then it says, hey, you've got to get to a minimum of $10 before you can take any money out. And every time you engage with this functionality to get that monetary reward, it's like 5 cents. So the player very quickly realizes, damn, I'm going to have to play this game for 7 months before I even get close to $10, right? This is just not going to delete the app, right? They just done. No more playtime for me. What we brought was, hey, Lightning can send it instantly, right? So we worked with game developers to demonstrate this, and then we showed them if you actually do reward the player truly instantaneously at the point at which they decided to do this for the reward, they will be much more engaged because they got the thing they were promised. They also are happy about that, and they got money. And so we now work with I don't know, 20, 30 developers or so, and they're all using our technology to reward players with real value, and they see the benefit in the engagement with their own games. It's higher than in a normal game or in a traditional version of their game, and that has worked quite well for us. And that's just starting at one pillar of the games industry, and we intend to be, serving the entire industry with basically a comprehensive suite of products.
Is it just for games? Can you use it for other sorts of applications?
You can, yes. We think of it as it's great for anything that involves entertainment. So we do work with Fountain and Wavelake. Both of those. So Fountain is a podcasting app that enables, if you're listening to a podcast, you can stream money per minute to the podcaster while you're listening to them. It's very, very cool. I'm like a podcast junkie, so I love this feeling of like you're truly paying the creator of the content, truly, and it's happening in real time. So there's something very powerful, I think, about that, which hasn't hit that critical mass. But if you look at the growth in creator monetization online and the fact that we're all poor and broke because the governments keep screwing us, then I think more and more people will turn to these side hustles to try and make some money. And as someone who's like, I'm in a band, Wavelake is the same thing but for music. I have read pretty much my entire life artists complaining about how little they're paid for their content. Like when I say artists, I mean musicians. So it started, I'm a diehard Prince fan. It started in the early 90s with Prince saying, if you don't own your masters own you. It built
You mean
up,
the artist formerly known as Prince, right?
the artist formerly known as the artist formerly known
Whatever,
as Prince.
yeah.
Yeah. He reverted to Prince in 2001, I think. But anyhow, it was him first. Then you had Radiohead saying, pay what you want for our music. Then you had Nine Inch Nails saying, like, steal it, I don't care, I'll make my money touring. Basically, they recognized that the value of their content through privacy had just gone to zero. And Spotify came and resolved it with streaming, but it didn't fix the monetization problem. You did not bring back the idea that a consumer paid $25 for a CD or a vinyl, and a big chunk of that went to the artist.
Yeah.
And it still hasn't been fixed. You've got to get 1 billion streams to make anything. These models, particularly like Wavelake and Fountain, and what they're doing with this value for value economy, I think is very interesting. And that all runs on our infrastructure. The advantage, I believe, that both founders of these companies saw was that when you do this with licensed infrastructure, when that regulatory piece is in place, you can pay businesses, and artists are businesses. They're sole traders, right? And if those artists, they want to, unlike us, they want to cash out that money. It's hard to make money in music. So if they make $100 from 20 people on Wavelake really loving their song, that's huge for them, right? You might get like £10 or $10 if you play a show in a pub in London. Like it's a massive night and day difference, but they want to sell that, and they want to give it to their band members. They actually want to get liquid quickly and liquid in fiat, because they don't care about Bitcoin. And that's where it comes back to, like Bitcoin needs to solve problems for people to prove that it is useful. And savings is a major problem. It is solving savings. It's the best savings account in the world.
I agree. Yeah, it's savings technology, not an investment.
Yeah, and it comes back to that like really old school sort of Bitcoin social media memes, like unit of account, store of value, medium of exchange. And I believe the store of value piece is still very much an adoption cycle in progress. The medium of exchange piece is probably at the beginning of that S curve, right? Like it's very, very early. There is it's the proportion of people who are going to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. You've got those who save, and it's a subset of them who feel they have saved enough that they can spend.
In the developed world.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's big because you talked about people don't want to spend it. I think the capital gains tax is a huge friction for people to spend. Whether everyone discloses everything, who knows? But it's I don't know. Yeah, whereas in some of these developing countries, maybe medium of exchange is a bit more extensive, but then they're too poor to actually save much of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see. I mean, we have a pretty distributed user base at ZBD, and we can see, volumes by country, and there is certainly. The whole thing about Latin America being much more engaged with spending Bitcoin and stable coins, to be fair, is true. It is true. You can see it in data. Do you think that's because they're a more kind of cash type society, and so it translates? I have some bias in terms of I have like this gets a bit anecdotal from my side. My wife's Brazilian, so we go out there quite a bit, and the adoption is also. I wouldn't say it's not like huge, but there is the on the street level open-mindedness towards Bitcoin being legit money is far more widespread than you'd find over here in the UK. So where does that come from? It was my father-in-law said to me like, listen, in the time I've been around, we've gone through 7 currencies, and they collapse roughly every 15 years. Like, here's another one, and it doesn't come from our government, so maybe it's got a chance at working, because the Brazilians are trying to get hold of like dollars most of the time, right? To get
And yeah, I'm pretty sure between last cycle and this one, it was the Mexican peso and the Brazilian real that were the last 2 currencies to actually hit all-time highs. And so actually they've been doing well against the dollar relatively recently. But yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So ZBD is in how many countries for?
Oh gosh, several. The thing is, we work the other way around, where we aren't. Where we aren't is like sanctioned countries, so like North Korea, Syria, etc. We try to operate everywhere that we can, but we do run licensed infrastructure for businesses. So the primary markets are the US and Europe. And then markets where licensing either isn't required because the governments haven't woken up, or it's legalized. Or just like unregulated. We operate there, but it changes quite a bit, to be honest.
How do you balance being a regulated company with dealing with user privacy? Because I think that's probably the biggest contention usually the Bitcoiners have with regulation, is that it's a huge privacy issue, that data is being collected about users that is then weaponized later potentially. My understanding is ZBD isn't KYC.
We do KYC users above certain levels,
Okay.
And it's the same as in we follow a lot of the like US regulation here, where like there are thresholds at which the government decides that this is a concerning amount of money,
Okay.
and we want to know who that person is. I think it's an interesting question around privacy, because I'm like a giga privacy nerd, and where I come at, I was surprised. I'm not going to like share here like the specifics, but I was surprised by actually how little we can see. And the reason is that Lightning, the protocol, is actually reasonably private by design, right? Like there's hops in the network. There's like a lot of stuff is onion rooted. You can't see very far or very deep, even if you want to. Like by design, it just doesn't get that far. So ultimately,
Right, when people talk about there are this many Lightning payments and there's this volume, I'm thinking, you don't know how much there is.
Yeah,
you really don't know how much.
There's a lot of nonsense there. The only thing that makes me this is a tangent. The only thing that makes me think Lightning's really working is that mempools are empty. But
I agree. Yeah.
But coming back to the question at hand, we do have a record of who you are, your real name, an email address, your date of birth. We verify that. We have to. That is what we do. Yeah, and in that sense, we also provide the means to go between Bitcoin and your local currency. So it's like the same as other Bitcoin apps in market that interface with fiat. So
you can hold fiat in the ZBD app.
Yes, but like very soon.
Oh,
the back end is built.
Breaking.
The front end is coming. Yeah. But it's the same as all the other regulated apps in that sense. And it's interesting, where I have landed is in a more, I mentioned at the beginning, the world is like, we treat it as black and white, and actually it's loads of shades of gray. I want to do anything in this country, like in the fiat world, I have to use a bank account in my name. I can't, unless I revert to cash, most things are in my name, traceable, blah, blah, blah.
You don't think it's viable to go bankless like many Bitcoin influencers seem to do?
I do think it very much is, but it's not the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to do private things in Bitcoin, don't go use a wallet where you have to give your identity. And the benefit of Bitcoin is it's permissionless, and you can generate an address like you can generate an email. Like, we're not forcing the world to KYC.
Exactly.
KYC is the default in the way society works today. If you try and collect a festival ticket, I mentioned I go to a lot of music, they have huge botting problems, like Ticketmaster, right?
Yeah.
How do you buy tickets to a concert? They make you KYC. Why do they KYC? Not because they want to hunt down your family.
They want profit margins.
They just want to verify that the bots aren't there. Like, that's all they're doing. And a KYC check in a ticketing platform for a concert show is to prevent bots. and people like freak out. These companies, because it creates data honeypots, etc. But we also already know that all of your data has already leaked because every single nation state has hacked each other and everything is just out there, particularly if you're American. So, I mean, I think to draw like hard lines on this ignores the commercial reality of operating. And more fundamentally, we need to drive usage and adoption of Bitcoin, or the whole thing will not work with time. And so, where do you want to? Where's your starting point? Because like I come from the point of view of let's create value, let's drive entrepreneurship, and let's drive adoption of Bitcoin through the creation of value. That is the lens through which I look at this world and I look at this market. I don't think that's a negative or bad thing for Bitcoin.
So you're saying that like it's a poisoned world, but you have the antidote.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, that was quite smooth.
Ben, tell us about Antidote. Something that's very exciting, happening very soon here in London.
It is actually now happening very, very soon. So, yeah, I mentioned I liked venture capital, or I come from venture capital. I'm surprised myself at how into entrepreneurship I truly am. And when I say entrepreneurship, not for myself, helping others build businesses, watching others build businesses. The genesis for Antidote is a startup studio for UK companies focusing on Bitcoin. The genesis of this was I was at one of the London Bitcoin meetups, the one on London Bridge, London Bitcoin Space.
Yeah.
And a couple of software engineers turned up one evening, and they were from fintech, so I won't dox them.
Looking for jobs, right?
Yeah, they were looking for jobs. They had converted to Bitcoin, they loved it, and they thought, okay, I'll turn up at these meetups, and I will see if I can leave my fiat job and come and work in Bitcoin. Same thing I did. But in the UK, it's hard, right? In the US, I love Americans for the fact that they commercialize and structure things quickly, right?
I mean, everything a bit too much sometimes, but yes, it's if you want to get business done, they celebrate it.
Yeah, they hustle, exactly. So you had all these Bitcoin sites showing up in these various states. You've got Bitcoin Park, you've got Bitcoin Commons, you had Wolf, you've got Presidio Bitcoin, all of them popping up. And I was asking around, like, where's the UK version of this? And it was very grassroots, which I loved, but it also was not doing the same thing as the American ones were doing. And
right, we have Cypher Monk House. Cypher was in the studio yesterday. It's a great community center and education center, but it's not a center of business.
I'd say, yeah, it's true. We've spoken, and we're probably going to do some events together and things like that. But I mean, I'm very collaborative by nature. But this is definitely a incubator accelerator, like a Y Combinator model for people who want to build Bitcoin companies. And it's very aggressively and nakedly commercial. Like, this is about making money. I believe that there is a ton of work, and I mean, NVK talks about it all the time. There's never been a better time to go and get a Bitcoin grant if you want to do some Bitcoin research or you want to develop in Bitcoin. There's never been a better time. You've got OpenSats, you've got all these options. So I would argue that segment of the market is actually somewhat covered. You can never have enough money, but it's somewhat covered. Like, there are places to go. There are still vanishingly few places to go if you're an entrepreneur wanting to build in Bitcoin.
Especially in Europe, right? I think you have like a few kind of Texas-based Bitcoin venture funds, maybe New York or Miami ones, but London and Europe is a bit more sparse. Would you say Fulgur is European-based?
Yes, because they do a lot in the Swiss scene. I mean, they are supporting Antidote. So it's what I'd say is I've spoken to many of the VCs in establishing this as well, and they are struggling also to build enough deal flow and enough of a funnel in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because there is this gap of where you need talent to leave the fiat world and come and develop solutions on a Bitcoin stack. And that is exactly where Antidote tries to sit. So, I want to encourage people who feel inspired, who have ideas, who believe they actually have a business that can drive growth in the UK, to come to us. They will get free office space, free legal advice, free structuring of their business, a free option on a 500k seed round. Like, you get a lot of support and mentorship to build your business.
Where's the office?
It will be in Farringdon.
Very cool.
Yeah. And we're at the end stage now. So we actually just got through the term sheet with our backers last Monday. We're targeting opening doors in August, and we will have 25 grand to allocate to each founder for relocation. It's like a 6-month mentorship program, which concludes with a pitch to VCs. Those VCs are also behind and backing Antidote. So the goal is 0 to seed in 6 months, and we'll give, it's potentially, if everything goes well, it's the easiest seed round a founder will have ever had. But that's if we're doing our job well. And the goal is, beyond just the starting up of a true commercial scene in the UK for Bitcoin companies, it also ties to, you've got a government here saying we want to drive growth, and then completely overlooking one of the fastest growing segments in the world in financial services. And aren't we supposed to be like a financial services hub? I don't see that.
I thought the best way to stimulate growth is to ask regulators what to do, isn't it? That's the Labour way.
Ask the regulators, borrow and then tax. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I disagree. Entrepreneurship is the ground floor of growth and the foundational base.
Right, grind out anyone's spirit and watch what happens to entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So but I am a doer in general. My attitude to struggle is to push back, right? And I believe that in this country we all have that within us, and we can build our way into success. And if we do it with the best money in the world, everyone will get fabulously rich. We will start to solve some of the problems that this country faces, and maybe even in a wider net in Europe and other places as well.
Where can people go to find out more about Antidote?
We've got a website, very shiny new one, antidote.biz. We've also got an X account, Antidote BTC, which can be followed for all the engagement over there.
And you say you're expecting to open in August. There's still available space for new applicants?
There's plenty of space for new applicants. So the way it will work is I mentioned this is it's very nakedly commercial. There's no free lunches at Antidote. So if we believe you apply as a founder, and we will review your application, which goes before then a board who approve it. That approval is your go moment, where you get the relocation money, you're invited into Antidote, and everything then within Antidote is free for 6 months. If you're just an engineer or you're a Bitcoin enthusiast, or you're keen on working around Bitcoiners, you can use it like a co-working space, just as with other Bitcoin spaces, and that's about £500 a month.
Very exciting. Okay, so this is starting in August in Farringdon. How big is the space? You're gonna have, you said 6 founders?
We will take in, so we're going to do founders on a rolling basis.
Yeah.
It's rather than this is the moment, it's much more how good is your idea. We work very closely with founders. We're already working with 4. I think in total over the next 12 to 18 months we'll plan on taking in about 18 founders in total and incubating them. There is desk space for 40 people. There's meeting rooms, places you can go take a phone call. That's the sort of basis of it. And there's stuff I can't yet announce because we need to confirm a few things, but the intention is to have quite a significant legal piece to this as well, in terms of support for founders, whether it be navigating the regulatory environment, establishing your business to be structured to take investment in a good way, by which I mean your capital structure. You can mess up yourself out the door by not setting up your company properly, particularly in an environment that we're in the UK around tax, right? So there's a lot of advice we want to be able to give to founders that involves just like setting yourself up for success day one. And then from day one, it's, prove your go-to-market, identify your customers. We'll do a monthly hackathon. I'll give some spoilers here. The first hackathon we'll probably do is how quickly can you make $1,000 legitimately? And I want people to think about making money, because making money buys you freedom and time. And once you've got that, you can then start to do R&D. You can then start to innovate. You can then start to differentiate. But you need cash flow to do these things. Nothing comes for free in life.
Have you built any startups yourself? ZBD
is probably the first one I've been in the ground floor at, and we've taken that into really pretty decent revenue in about 3 years. I have spent the last 10 years advising and working with founders on building businesses. I've had 2 businesses I've worked with that returned the fund that I was at, Lakestar. I also am now starting my own business in Antidote. So, like I said, I won't profess to be. I am a doer, but I won't profess to be like Nostradamus. things go wrong, and admitting that, I think, and admitting your own limitations is a huge part of building a business. We're also it's not just me either. I'm supported by two co-founders here. One is a guy called Andy. I've worked with him most of my life. We're very close friends. He's a serial founder. He's on his second business now. Antidote's his third, and he's a designer. He builds in a way I don't build. And then Michele is also he comes from Fulga Ventures.
Yep.
He's a VC. He helps with the go-to-market. Around that, we also have an advisor base that we are bringing into this, and I've very deliberately gone outside of the Bitcoin community to pull in people who have scaled real businesses.
Yeah.
And again, I need to get a couple more signed commitments here, but to tease one of the people we're bringing in, they are the COO or former COO of a business that has grown to a $3 billion exit from zero, and he was part of the whole journey. That was he has nothing to do with Bitcoin, like nothing to do with Bitcoin. But I don't think I've ever seen someone who's been a more effective operator. Right? And this is the skill set we need to bring to this community, to know how to make money. And making money doesn't depend on whether you can do something amazing with like a tap leaf script. Like that's very, very cool, but where is the dollar made that keeps your lights on? Like that's the things I want to answer.
I think many Bitcoiners have hubris because they are so right about Bitcoin that they forget that there are lots of other very competent people in the world, many of whom who don't pay attention to Bitcoin precisely because they have been so competent. If your income, if your wealth outpaces inflation, then maybe you don't need to look at Bitcoin.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
And yeah, some of the hardest builders do just keep on going. They keep expanding their cash flow, which is one of the things that Bitcoin doesn't solve. I did a talk at Cyphermonk House for Bloomfest entitled it was Bitcoin doesn't fix everything. I listed 21 things that Bitcoin doesn't fix. One of which is your cash flow, right? Your personal finances aren't just completely fixed by Bitcoin. It may help your savings in the long term, but in the short term, it might not do.
Agree. Yeah, I agree. Money itself is boring. People don't like to talk about money all day, and we have the joke in the UK that is, no British people talk about money. It's rude, and yet we talk about it all the time. When I say money is boring, what I mean is like it works for us in society. Ignoring the store of value piece and the preservation of purchasing power, the experience of tapping your phone to pay for something, or go through a ticket gate, or subscribe to something online, is nowadays really quite seamless.
Well, it's been better here than the US for a while, right?
Yeah,
we can do free instant bank transfers rather than paying some exorbitant fee or waiting some silly amount of time for that transfer to be made. So it's
exactly
less obvious.
And you've got to be honest about Bitcoin is nowhere near that level of user experience yet. Like nowhere near. I love working with founders who want to get there. It is intensely complicated, as everyone I think knows when you start looking under the hood, which is why the services that deliver good UX are custodial, because they take that shortcut. If you want to get there, I think we probably need more time, and you're potentially attacking the wrong end of the market versus the contemporary position we're in, if that makes sense. So one of the things I said, we gave a presentation on Antidote to UCL's business school, and I'm really quite adamant that like there's a million wallets without a monetization model. Don't build another wallet. Like that is not the layer.
Well, I heard about someone buying a wallet the other day. I'm thinking, as in not the app. I mean, buying the wallet company. I'm thinking, why would you buy a wallet company? That makes no sense to me.
Unless you have a good monetization plan for it.
It's
right?
not like one that had like a some sort of privacy mixer or what something like that. It was just a seemingly standard Lightning wallet. I don't understand.
Okay. Maybe we talk about that offline so I can understand a bit more. I mean, I think I'll tell you a pain point we do see. We are offering up ideas to founders who aren't sure where they want to focus at Antidote, and Bitcoin accounting is a big one, and that could be priced like SaaS and make you monthly income.
Yeah.
It is fiendishly tedious for anyone who works in finance to manage a business that deals in Bitcoin. The cost-based stuff, the tax stuff, everything about it, the fact that it's actually really quite private, it's very, very difficult to do accounting in Bitcoin, and there's no solutions. Someone who built a platform like a SaaS that actually solved this really, really well for Bitcoin businesses would find an instant addressable market and could monetize. Then you can solve the problem of how do I get this into traditional businesses, and what products can I cross-sell and build there, and how do I really build and scale value? Because I think the other thing that people take for granted, I heard at the Cheat Code conference, there was a panel about venture capital, and I was listening, and I won't throw shade on too many people, but a lot of the criticism was VCs aren't technical enough. VCs need to get down to our level of technical. VC's job is not to be technical. VCs have bosses. Their bosses are the people who invest in them, which is typically pension funds. They need to
Bitcoin is a high
money.
time preference when it comes to education.
Yeah,
is what it is.
I think so. But the Bitcoin VCs who exist in the market today deeply and truly understand Bitcoin. So to say that they need to get more technical, I really strongly push back on. What if it's you need to be more commercial, right? And a VC investor gives you $1 expecting 10 back in 5 years. If you don't have a plan to get them that 10 back, and it's not or if you do, it's not believable, don't be surprised if they choose not to invest. In the pre-Bitcoin world, a common saying I would encounter in venture capital was, these folks should just take a loan, right? Because a loan comes with lower return expectations. Equity is the most expensive thing you can sell in your business, and it comes with the highest return expectation. If you take a loan and build your business, you've retained ownership in your company. That's great. If you own your company 100% and you can pay yourself fat dividends, well done. You're getting rich. That's a good thing. Celebrate it. Not every business needs venture capital. Game-changing businesses should take venture capital. Then the maths works. Then it makes sense. Then everyone can make 10x and everyone's happy. So I would encourage Bitcoin entrepreneurs to think more with that mindset.
So lots of thoughts for everyone to think about out there. The ink freshly drying here on Think Tank Thursday, the inaugural session. Thank you very much, Ben, for joining me. I'm Walton. This is the Bitcoin Business Lounge. We'll see you soon. Thank you.